Welcome to Slaying Excel Dragons video number 6. Hey, we're still in chapter 3. Here are our topics. And this is amongst one of the most important topics in Excel because this is where people really get tripped. So we got to talk about number formatting as facade. We're going to talk about date number formatting, time number formatting, percentage number formatting, and other number formatting. Now, let's go over to our workbook. Our workbook is our excelisfun start. Of course, if you want to download it, you click on the link below the video. Now, number formatting, why is it so important? Well, we saw one example last video. If I click in this cell right here, I count 7 characters. But look, I only had to type 3 in. So, excellent thing number 1, I can avoid typing things like dollar signs, decimals, and 0, 0. All I had to do was type in 3 characters. But the most important concept is to understand that this formatting right here is on the surface of the spreadsheet. It is not actually what is in the cell under the surface of the spreadsheet. All right, now we're going to talk about, let's go over to our sheet decimals. So here it is, some tax collected, 10, 2, 10, 6, 3, 4, 5. All I want to do is add it up. Now, we're going to use the sum function, as we've done so many times already in this book. The keyboard shortcut is Alt equals. All right, so it's guessed A2 to A8. It looks right, so I'm going to hit Control Enter. Control Enter puts the formula in the cell and keeps the cell selected. So 41. But is there a problem? Let's go ahead and come over here. We see these numbers here on the surface of the spreadsheet. I want you to type the numbers that you see over here, right here. So I'm going to type a 10, 2, 10, 6, 3, 4, 5. Now let's add it up. Alt equals Control Enter. What? No way. We can't have the same numbers here adding up to 40 and the same numbers here adding up to 41. What's the problem? Well, pretty much immediately every time you run into the situation, you can be sure that it's not Excel making the error. It's probably us, the user. And more specifically, Excel usually doesn't make logic or math errors. So what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to click in cell A2. Anytime I run into this situation, remember, these are formulas. I'm going to hit F2. These are cell references, and these are formula inputs. Excuse me. We already saw earlier when we did sum ifs that once the formula wasn't calculating right, we knew to go look at the formula. And then if that wasn't the problem, we go and look at the raw data that goes into the calculations. Earlier, we saw how the word Tina and the word Tina with a space were not equal. So we're going to go look at our data. I'm just going to start in cell A2. Now, with sum number formatting, what you see here, look at this. You can actually see up here that there's something different. Not all number formats are going to be like that. But when you just have a number and decimals, you'll always be able to look up into the formula bar. So it looks like someone typed this in and then reduced the decimals. Right? So you see the complete divorce between what we see on the surface of the spreadsheet and what's actually underneath in the cell. Let's go ahead and highlight this whole column. And for that matter, I want you to come over here and highlight this column too. I'm going to hold Control. Holding Control, I've highlighted this. Now I can come over here holding Control and click and drag. That allows me to highlight ranges that are not next to each other. The fancy word is non-contiguous. And now I'm going to use home ribbon, number group. I'm just going to use this decimal. Now, earlier in the class, we saw how to add buttons to the QUAT. And these are 2 buttons I have on my QUAT, because no matter where I'm working, I know that I'm going to get into trouble with decimals showing or not showing. So I'm just going to use this one, increase. And I'm going to increase it a bunch. And there you go. These formulas do not look at formatting, right? So this formula here was not looking at the formatted numbers we saw. It was adding the numbers underneath. That's why we got that 0.639. And when you reduce this down, I'm reducing just this cell here, this button right here, it's going to show as 41. All right, I'm going to increase this back up. Okay, so lesson number 1, don't get tricked by formatting, and formulas don't look at formatting, they look at the underlying numbers. All right, now we got to go talk about dates. Dates in Excel are very important, and when you first learn them, you're like, what? So let's take a look. I'm going to click in cell B1, and I'm going to type 1/1/1900. Huh, that's interesting. Now, I just typed that out with the slashes, but let's do that a little bit slower. I'm going to type 1/. Now, in order to put a date into Excel, you got to type a /. You could also do a dash if you want, but I usually do /. So the month and the month, day, year is determined by your regional settings, regional and language settings in the Start menu control panel. All right, so mine are set up month, etc. Now you can change the formatting once you enter this, but for us, so on this computer, it's going to be month, day. So I'm going to type a 2 and then 1900. Now in cell B3, I'm going to type 4/26/2009 and then enter. And then I'm going to type 5/12/2009. Now, when we type these in, I'm going to click right here. We see something on the surface of the spreadsheet, and we see it up here also. We will always see some sort of date formatted number up here and here. To get underneath the spreadsheet and really see what Excel put into the cell, we're going to have to highlight these. And I would like to apply the general format. Now get this, we type this in. Our procedure is always going to be the month/day/year. But when we type this in like this, it automatically applied a date format, and there's some other number underneath. So I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut for format cells, Control-1. And then under here on the number tab, under category, we see date. But I'm going to go back to general. Now this is going to be shocking. Here's a little sample right here. Watch this when I click this. 1. Why 1? I'm going to click OK. No way. We typed those dates in, and underneath got put a number. These are called serial numbers. Now I'm going to Control-Z. That's the keyboard shortcut for undo. The reason why there's numbers underneath is because we want to do things like date math. Now, the first day that Excel knows is 1/1/1900. Now, the reason why they picked this date is because there's not very many invoices or loan documents issued that were issued before this date here. So they had to pick some date. By the way, historians are not happy. Historians oftentimes use dates before this, and that's hard to do in Excel. So again, I'm going to Control-Y. That's redo the undo. I'm going to Control-Y. So notice we typed it in, and there's numbers. These are called serial numbers. These are the days. So right here, this is the number of days since December 31st, 1899. I'm going to Control-Z. The reason we have those numbers there is so we can do this. We can do date math. I could say due date for invoice today. I'm going to come up here in between A and B. I'm going to double click this. And I'm going to type days, bad type, past due. Because there's numbers underneath these, this number, and let's just do that again. I'm going to Control-1 general. Because there's days underneath, that's a bigger day than this. So we can just subtract them anytime we have dates. And it will tell us the number of days between two dates. I'm going to Control-Z, and here's our formula. It's always going to be equals the later date minus the earlier date. And automatically, because formulas don't look at formatting, remember that's formatting on the surface of the spreadsheet, it's going to look at the numbers underneath. And when I Control-Enter, is that not magic? And what's beautiful about this is as the days go by, right? So it's the 12th today, but maybe it's the 19th later on. That formula is just going to update perfectly. And for doing invoices and loan documents and things like that, just amazing. All right, let's look at another example over here. Here's Here we have a loan issue date, 1/1/2010, and there's the term. It's a 45-day short-term loan, and we just want to calculate the maturity date. Now, over here, we subtracted 2 dates, right? But no problem. Date math allows us to do any type of math with our days, because really, remember, there's numbers underneath. Escape, come over here. We simply add equals the start date plus our number of days. Is that amazing? 2/15/2010. Now, Control 1. If your computer comes up with this, right, that means it calculated, or for whatever reason, it calculated the number of days since December 31st, 1899. Remember, January 1st, 1900 is 1. But if that comes up, no problem. We know that we can format numbers with number formatting. Control 1. I'm going to click on date. And notice, wow, there's a bunch of amazing date formats. I can even notice once you have the number in there, you can show month, year, date, month, day, however. And you can actually scroll down here. Just all sorts of amazing. I'm going to click this one right here. That's just amazing. February 15th, 2010. Now remember, that word February is not in the cell. It's still that serial number. Now, if I Control 1 and apply general, you know what? Once I do that, you see that? I'm going to cancel this. There's actually a keyboard shortcut. Control plus Shift plus tilde, or the accent, the grave accent key. The tilde and the grave accent is to the left of the number 1 key. It also could look like that. Control Shift. Actually, some people see it like that. Some people see it as that. But that keyboard shortcut wipes away all the formatting and reverts back to general formatting. So I'm going to try it. Control Shift tilde. We'll see that throughout this class, that comes in handy, especially when we do time math for like payroll and things like that. I'm going to Control Z and leave it. All right, that's just a little bit about dates. I'm double clicking. Notice, oh, what does that mean right there? It means the column is not wide enough. We saw that a couple videos ago. So I'm going to double click between B and C. I'm actually going to add a little formatting right here. And as I have done throughout this whole book, the cells that are green usually mean there are formula. All right, now let's go over to our time math sheet. I'm going to zoom way in here. All right, we've got to talk about time. Actually, that wasn't supposed to be there. All right, time. Time in, time out, and then we're going to calculate the hours worked. Here's how you type in time. Just like you type in dates, there's a convention for time. So 6 is the hour, colon, and then the minutes. And then you got to type a space, and then either PM or AM. Notice I type space and then AM little. But when I Control Enter, it pops up to capital. It's programmed to do that. As soon as you type that colon, a number, a colon, another number, you're telling Excel, I'm putting a time in the cell. Now look what's up here. You could see that it put in 6:00. Those are the minutes. But there's also seconds. We didn't need them here, so we didn't type them in. Now, in order to understand the serial number that sits in the cell underneath this time format, just like with dates, dates have a date format, and there's a number underneath, so you can do date math. Time, you type in the time with the time typing convention. But what gets put in the cell is a number, because we have to be able to use these in calculations like hours worked. To see what the number is behind the number 6, I want to do a number here. I want to type 0.25 and then tab. And now I want to do a formula equals 6 divided by 24. Now the 6 is 6 hours through the day. And the 24 in the denominator of this fraction, by the way, that means divide. That 24 is the total hours in a day. So what's going to get put into the cell every time you type a time is the proportion of 1 24-hour day. That way, this is going to be 0.25, because 6 hours out of 24 is 0.25. When we get down here, we'll put like 4, and it will be whatever proportion more than 50% of the day. We will have two numbers, and we can subtract them. I'm going to go hit Enter here. I'm going to highlight both of these cells, and then I'm going to apply a time format. Now, in our last date example, we applied the format and then wiped away the date number format. Here, we're going to look at it from a slightly different point of view. We're going to take our number and then format it and see if we can get 0.25 to show up as 6 a.m. Control 1 opens Format Cells, Number tab, Time. There's a bunch of times, including military time right there. I'm going to select this first one right here. Actually, no, I'm going to select this one because I don't want to see the seconds. There's always a sample up here. The Number tab is just awesome. All sorts of amazing options for you. And then within each category here, there's a bunch of options and a sample. I'm going to click OK. No way. Look at that. Even though those were numbers we put into the cell, when we format them, we can see 6 a.m. Now, let's prove this to ourselves. Let's go Control 1. Actually, no, let's use our keyboard shortcut. Control-Shift-tilde or grave accent. No way. Now we can see the formula bar exactly the same. I'm going to Control-Z for undo. But when you type in 6 a.m., it automatically puts that format in both the formula bar and the surface of the cell. We see that 6 a.m. All right, now let's type 4:30 space and PM. Enter. All right, so if we wipe away the time number format, Control-Shift-tilde, we can see that's 0.6875. Remember, this is 0.6875. That's 0.25. Bigger number minus smaller number. I'm going to Control-Z. Later time minus earlier time. So I click in this cell right here, and I type an equal sign to start our formula. Later time minus earlier time. Control-Enter. Now notice what happened. This formula, if I put it back into edit mode, anytime you do cell references, or oftentimes, it will suck the number formatting from the cell references themselves. So when I enter this, it's applied from the cell references, which are formula inputs, supplied that format. So I'm going to immediately Control-Shift-tilde. All right, so that is the proportion of 124-hour days. It looks like we worked 10.5 hours. No lunch break, by the way. 10.5 hours. But that proportion is not very useful for doing payroll calculations. For example, if we had to multiply this by a wage, forget it. It's not going to work. So if this is the proportion of 124-hour days, this is 10.5 divided by 24. How do we get back up to 10.5? Well, we simply make a formula that say equals the proportion of 124-hour day times 24. Now, here's a little situation here. So far in this class, we've had cell references. We always point to our formula inputs. But here we're typing a number into a formula. In general, you shouldn't do that because it's inefficient. This is pointing there, and this formula is pointing to these because these inputs could change, right? But guess what? 24 hours in a day, that's a formula input. That'll never change. The number of hours in a day are not going to change anytime soon. So the rule of thumb is if the formula input is not going to change, just type it into the formula. There's our 10.5. Now, usually you don't do it in a two-step process like this. You would usually do it like this. Open parentheses, because we're going to do a subtraction. So I'm going to do that subtraction in parentheses, and then I'm going to multiply it by 24. Control-Enter. That's like in one formula. Now, what if you did have a lunch break? So I'm going to come down here. If you had a lunch break, so there was what I did is I copied Control-C and then Control-V right there. But I really want to say timeout was 11:30 a.m. I'm going to copy both of these, click right there and paste. Control-C, Control-V. I'm going to say 1:00 space PM. Add some borders. And then we left at 4:30 space PM. I got all my AMs and PMs right. And then Here's another great trick. It's not in the books at this point, but I want to actually copy the format here. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on that. That is the format painter. You can click and click right there, and it applies just the formatting. All right, and now our formula, well, we have some time here plus some time here. Now, I'm going to do something tricky here. I'm going to do the keyboard shortcut for AutoSum. Now, notice so far in this class we've only used a single range, but the argument shows number, number. So you can actually do lots of up to tons and tons, hundreds of inputs. So I'm going to do 2. I'm going to say later time before lunch minus the earlier time before lunch. That's going to calculate, and then I'm going to type a comma. And I'm going to say, oh, the later time minus the earlier time. Now, that'll give me the proportion worked without the lunch, right? So if I enter that, 9 a.m., that's not going to work. Control-Shift tilde. Oh, 0.375. So if I hit F2, what do I have to do to that sum with these? It's adding. It actually calculates, and I can show you. If you highlight a part of a formula and hit F9, you could see that it'll actually calculate this. That's the proportion of a 24-hour day's work before. I'm going to Control-Z. Don't leave that hard-coded in. Come over here. F9. Oh, that's the proportion of a 24-hour day worked after lunch. Control-Z. F9 to evaluate, but Control-Z because you don't want to hard-code it. So I simply, the sum function will add those, so I can simply say times 24. Control-Shift tilde. 9 hours. Now if we had a wage, I'm going to use that border there. What's called gross pay. Add some formatting. Now this color right here is not in your standard color, so you have to go down to more. And it's like that. It's the one I always use. Also, gross pay is simply, oh, our hourly wage times our hours worked. Now let me ask you a question. Does it matter what order we do this? Could I go like this? Times this? Yeah, because 1 times 2 is the same as 2 times 1, so you can do it in any order. All right, that's a bunch about time, very important concept. Let's scroll over here. Let's scroll over here. There's just a nice little table. This is in the book too. 0, that's if you typed in the number 0 and added time format, that's what will show up. 0.25 is 6. 0.333 is 8. 5 is 12 p.m., which is exactly noon. 0.75, etc., etc. So all the way up to 1. 1 is registered as 0 and 1 are both the same number there. All right, now we got to talk about percentage number format. Let's click on the sheet percentage 1. And we want to talk about percentages. This is an important area, just like date and time. And it's important because one of the most common questions asked is about percentage number format. Here is the question that is asked most often. People say, I have some tax rate. And let's say it is 6%. So they type the number 6 in a cell. And then they come up here and they click this button. And they see 600%. What they were trying to get is 6%. Well, what you have to understand about percentages is that they are a number format that's applied on top of a number. If you get 6 pennies out of every $1, which is 6 pennies out of 100 pennies, you would get the number, the decimal, 0.06. That means, for taxes, it means give me 6 pennies out of every 100 pennies that you make or buy, right? Well, what happens in grammar school or in a business math class? You learn how to convert a decimal to percentage. And the 2 steps are, you take step 1, 0.06 times 100. Now that's going to show up as text because there's no equal sign, but I wanted it that way. Well, what's 0.06 times 100? It is 6. That is step 1. I actually should. Okay, so that in grammar school or business math, that's how you're taught. Step 1. And then step 2, what is step 2? Step 2 is you take the 6 and you slap a percentage sign. Now I'm going to have to type a lead apostrophe here because I literally want to store it as text. If I don't put that a lead apostrophe, it'll treat it as a number. I just want to show you that this is how we learn. And the problem with this is people think that this number right here is the thing that they apply the percentage number format. It's not. Once you do this step right here, when you're doing it by hand or conceptually in your head, you have a number 6. And because 0.06 does not equal 6, when you take the number 6 and apply the number format here, it's doing both steps. So you don't want to get confused about that. Remember, it's got to be 0.06 and then apply the number format. So when I do this, 600. But when I type 0.06 and I apply the number format, it gives me 6%. Now, I've just been clicking here. I avoid usually this by the plague. We'll see an example of problems with this in just a moment. All right, so let's come up here. 0.088. We're going to type that number in. This is the tax rate, 0.088. Now, that's the number that sits in the cell. So when I Control 1 and go to percentage. Now, what I like about this is I have full control over the decimals. Now, you can click this, but don't forget to do decimals up here also. So I'm going to say 2 and then click OK. Now, look. Again, the formula, just like date and time, the formula bar and the surface of the cell are showing us the same thing. But we know Control-Shift-Tilde, that's not what's in the cell. I'm going to Control-Z. Now, we can do a formula with our percentage equals this times this. And that will give us our 88 cents or whatever. Now, I want to show you something. We've been talking about formatting as facade. We know that that's not really what's in the cell. We know that's not really what's in the cell. That's not really what's in the cell. And right here, there's a formula. That's not really what's in the cell either. There's a number showing, but underneath there's a formula. Well, there's a keyboard shortcut to look. We've been using our keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-Tilde. And the reason I teach it that way is I'm emphasizing that it's formatting. And we can remove formatting by applying general format, Control-Z. But if you use Control grave accent or tilde, remember that key is to the left of the number 1, just Control, not Control-Shift, but just Control tilde, it shows you everything underneath actually what is in the cell. Here we can see there's a number when we have percentage number format. With the date, we could see it's a serial number from number of days since December 31st, 1899. And here for time, we can see it's the proportion of 1 24-hour day. Here, there was currency applied, but really all there is in the cell is 10. And here is a formula. Pretty cool to be able to have the power to know what Excel puts in the cells. Control grave asterisk or tilde. And then that on the surface of the spreadsheet can be something totally different. Now, one last thing for this video, very important. We're going to come over to this percentage sheet right here. And we're going to encounter all 6 of the potential ways you can encounter percentages. Now, the first one is you could type a decimal. So 0.03. And I'm going to add the format. Control 1, percentage, click OK. The trouble that people get in is they type a 3. Well, we know that 3 times 100 is 300. So this is going to come out 300%. Control 1, percentage, click OK. Now, knowing that how percentages work, that one example right there, I guarantee you if you go and get a job and people know you're the Excel guru, within 1 week, someone will come up and ask you that problem. That's just like ubiquitous everywhere. All right. The other way to do this is instead of, notice here we put 0.03 first and then 3 first. But if you pre-format the cells like this, Control 1, percentage, and click OK, it doesn't matter which one you type in. I can type in a 3 here. Now, when you type in a 3, the percentage format pops up saying I am a pre-formatted cell. So when I hit Enter, 3%. When you type a decimal, it's not quite as polite as if you type a 3. It's not indicating visually that it's pre-formatted, but when you Control Enter, it is. It works. So if it's pre-formatted, either one of these work. You can also format as you type. So if I type a 3, Control Enter, you could see it's not pre-formatted. But if I type 3.00 and then a % symbol, we're formatting as we type, just as we did with time when we typed a colon, or just as we did with dates when we typed those slashes. That's all type formatting as you type. So boom, when I go like that. Now notice here's a 3%, here's a 3%. If I Control Shift tilde, remember I typed in a bunch of characters here, but when I Control Shift tilde, what actually got put in the cell is 0.03. Control Z. And finally, here's the other second biggest problem that people have. I'm going to type 0.05. This should come up as 2.5%. People then just click the button up here. I never use this. I don't use this button very often. And this is why, because when you click it, by default, that button shows 1. And people that don't know about number formatting, they're like, what happened to my 2.5%? I typed in the decimal 0.025, and when I formatted it, it changed it to 3. Well, it didn't. Remember, what's on the surface of the spreadsheet is not really there. And in fact, I'll prove it to you. What's 100? Whoops. I'm going to Control Shift tilde, and I'm going to type 100. Control Shift tilde will wipe the formatting away. And I'm going to multiply equals 100 times 3%. Well, it better be $3, but no way. That formula right there sees through that formatting. Remember? This right here, that's a formula. So it's not going to look at the surface of the spreadsheet or the formatting. It's looking underneath. Now, when you have a decimal problem like this, you can look up into the formula bar and look at it. But you don't want to leave your spreadsheet like that. That's just terrible. All right, number formatting, however important. And by the way, this chapter, we've talked a lot about data, right? And we haven't talked so far in this book much about formulas or data analysis or all the cool formulas and features. And the reason why is if we don't understand how data works in the spreadsheet before we get to all the more advanced things, then we're in trouble. All right, that was pages 57 to 78 in the textbook. Now you can go do some homework problems. Here's our file, slaying Excel Dragons, chapters 1 to 9 homework. For chapter 3 is page 57 to 78. There's homework 12, an answer, 13, an answer, 14, an answer. All right, see you next video.